The Federalists did not want a Bill of Rights because they were worried that enumerating the rights would make people believe that those are the only rights available to them.
Right.
So they actually thought that writing it down, capturing those rights, guaranteeing those rights was a downside for the Constitution because it would be limiting. And so this is one of the things, if people have rights, you don't have to tell them. You don't have to enumerate them. That was the understanding of the Federalists, which is why they push back against this. And so you end up in this scenario where, look, you understand, having been to the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
Like that actually, the idea that everyone has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or property is not actually self-evident to a lot of cultures, a lot of peoples, right?
Correct.
And so actually...
Any non-Christian culture.
Correct, right. And so when we say self-evident, we meant self-evident to a specific people. So it's not that I don't believe words don't have meaning.
Well, the original draft of the Constitution didn't say self-evident. It said like something like divine and inspired. It was more religious in nature. Mm-hmm. And because the Declaration was a statement of theology. It was a Christian state. It wasn't Enlightenment. The other thing too, I think one of the big the big debates, there's kind of this new populism on the right. It's more, I don't even know how to describe it. It's more focused on people. It's a little more animal, a little more real. Whereas you kind of have the pie in the sky conservatives that are all like law and these abstract principles, right? And so I think there's a middle ground there where both of these meet. For example, we know that we were constituted, our stock, the founding stock of America was the same as the stock in Europe at the time, but we still had to separate from Europe, and we did it with a document. We were the same people genetically, but we still had to separate them from them. Because we had Europeans, Christian Europeans under a Christian tyrant living under tyranny and despotism in Great Britain. And so it was that document that created that separation
but it didn't.
Of one people from another.
There was one other point on the Federalists versus Anti-Federalists, and it's the Anti-Federalist side, that if these rights are not written down, they will change and we will lose them. And so considering they were different states and the views were all slightly different, they said, no, these have to be guaranteed. Otherwise, 20 years from now, the federal government's going to say, no, you actually can't do that.
Yes.
And so they wanted it written down.
They were right.
However,
if we hadn't had those written down, they would have dissolved very quickly.
I disagree
because people have been. Those rights have been under attack since the founding. For 250 years.
The main issue here is, one, to the offense of anybody who's not Christian, or I suppose that's not necessarily true, but this is a Christian nation, was founded as such, and the issue is that the federal Constitution did not proclaim this because each state had their own rules as to their own laws as to the Christianity. Most notably, with Commonwealth v. Massachusetts, Abner Kneeland was specifically charged for denying Christ. Each colony had a requirement that you profess a belief in a Christian God. I believe Maryland was the only one. Well, I think Virginia was because Thomas Jefferson. Yep. You just had to believe in God. I believe it was a Christian God or of some sort. But Maryland, because they were largely Catholic, allowed you to just say, if it's a Christian God, you're good. But the states all basically said, if you don't believe in Christ, you cannot hold office.
Right. Yep.
And that is a Christian nation. Now, the federal Constitution avoided asserting a specific religion because then you get the Catholics in Maryland upset with the Protestants of Virginia. And now, today, liberals argue the federal Constitution never says God, never says Christianity, and we have drifted from those moral traditions largely more and more over time. So again, I appreciate the federal Constitution. I think it's great, but I also think there's an issue with abandoning state constitutions and acting like they don't exist.
Yeah. No, I agree. Federalism took a terrible blow in the Civil War, and it's hard to argue for federalism from that standpoint now because then people will say you're arguing for slavery and all this stuff, and that puts you in a bind. But we do need kind of a reassertion of federalism. I think we do need a reassertion of and this is kind of what can be fun about this discussion. We have 250 years of history that we can look back on where we can say, like, there's precedent for this. Like, this isn't an un-American thing that we're proposing. we can propose it from that standpoint, that we're not coming in as like Christian nationalists from the outside here to subvert America and subvert the Constitution and turn America into our own thing. We're talking about going back to what we were for the first 80 years of our existence, and so
this is actually my problem with the term Christian nationalism. I don't like it because I think it makes something novel out of what is just being an American.
Yes.
We were already a Christian nation. There's no need for a new term for it. It's not new. It's not novel. We didn't, Stephen Wolfe didn't cook it up somewhere.
Right.
It's just the way that the United States has functioned. But the problem, and this is a core issue, Joel, you have to address, right? Republics are a very specific form of government. It's not just people vote. That's not what a republic is. A republic is a gathering of self-governing people who live in a specific way and have enough virtue that they do not require a centralizing force to smooth over their differences because they don't have the level of discipline or cultural homogeneity to solve these problems. Mm-hmm. Republics are regularly cited from everyone from Aristotle to Machiavelli as a place where the citizens specifically fight in the military. That you can't have a standing army and have a republic. And you know who said that? The guys writing the Federalist Papers, who said very specifically, the reason that you're keeping the Second Amendment and the reason that you need to turn your militias over to the federal government is so that we don't have standing armies, because if we do, that's a danger to the sovereignty of the people and will eventually corrode the republic. Republics can't span continents. They can't be empires. They can't scale to the way we've had. And that's why it's so difficult to discuss the United States as a republic since the Civil War, because that's obviously a case of imperial expansion. That's not self-governance. And so you have the problem where we are not and have not been a republic for a very long time. We in no way, shape, or form meet that definition. And yet we continue to pretend that that's the case. If you want to go back, okay, fine, but you have to make radical changes to return to the form of a republic. And frankly, I don't think anyone is comfortable limiting the franchise down to one person per household, making it only property owners, making sure only Christians can be elected officials, making sure that only people who have done military service could vote or be elected. These are
I think you'd be surprised, because we're at this place where, like in the conservative movement, all the gravity's out of the room. We're not sure where anything is going to land. People like Nick Fuentes are gaining traction, and no matter what crazy things they say, I think it's an open ball game for us to make bold assertions and bold proposals for how we can restore this republic.
I think the reason,
but it has to be in the context of a return, not an acceleration to a demise and a rebuild.
But a return to what?
Well, that's the debate, and I think
Christian nation.
I think we can have compromises on that. I think if with federalism, we can have a different, we can have a patchwork of different ideas.
Here's what I see. I think there's a reason why people like Nick Fuentes, largely Nick Fuentes, are growing an audience. One, I do think it's fair to say that he's certainly moderated. Years ago, he was saying shocking things for the sake of being the shocking guy. He got canceled, and then he went way off the deep end. Now he's trying to pull it a little bit back down, though he does say things that are still, by many, off the rails. But he's aggressive. And I think when you point out that this country has sort of let these things go, if Christianity had been stronger, or the leaders in the 1950s had been more aggressive, none of this would be happening. And so today you look at all the problems we face, and there is something that is very clear: demographics being destiny. If you're a Christian nation and everyone's Christian, guess what? You don't have that high of crime, right? If everybody was of the same moral worldview as Charlie Kirk, you don't need police anymore.
Yep.
No one's going to steal from each other. They're going to help each other out. You probably don't even need insurance companies, because everyone will come and help build each other's home. But you need these systems, you need these laws as you start inviting in other cultures and moral worldviews, to the point where in Dearborn, Michigan, you have a problem with female genital mutilation, which is normal to them. Or you have Sharia patrols popping up in New York and these other places. So then Nick Fuentes comes around and he says to these young men, look at what these people have wrought. They claimed to be for America, they claimed to be Christian, but they invited in infidels, blasphemers, and those people have, for your worldview, destroyed the fabric of your nation.
Yep.
We should reverse that. And they say, he's correct.
Yep.
So then, what is the solution?
I don't see that as. I mean, Nick Fuentes is not the first person to say that, though. I mean, Rush Limbaugh was saying that in the 90s. I mean, Rush Limbaugh was a populist. He was talking about, Chamber of Commerce conservatives who are married to the corporations, who are bringing in immigrants because they care more about the Dow and the GDP than they care about American citizens. So this is nothing like Nick Fuentes is. The problem is nothing new, and Nick Fuentes is not the first person to address it. And Nick Fuentes too. The thing that I've been warning about with him is that he just had this. There's this video going around now where he's calling for the America First right to unite with the left, give up the free market, and the left can give up on immigration so that we can have an ethnically homogenous country again that is also socialist.
Because he is an economic leftist,
right?
And I think he's always been. I don't think. See, this is
that is absolute slavery, and that's the thing that I think MAGA has gotten away from it a little bit. Because we're so disillusioned with how capitalism has exploited people and corporations have gotten too big and powerful. I understand all that. But if we give our freedom, our economic freedom away to the government, I mean, that is not, we become slaves.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.